2020 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Our chairman and vice chairman are not present, so as the oldest member of the board, I get to be the chairman. So the first item on our agenda is roll call.
Mr. Desmond.
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Here.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mr. Green.
Here.
Mr. Rahman.
Here.
Mr. Clark. Mr. Bossenbrook.
Here. Okay. Second item on the agenda is the reading of the procedure for the meeting. I'd like to call on the person to my left, who normally is the vice chairman.
Hello, I'm Aaron Green. I'm an alternate on this board. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors appointed by City Council to decide on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Petitioners must indicate a hardship or practical difficulty with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. The procedure for this evening is as follows. The board will hear the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. When an item is called, the chairman will verify that the petitioner is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. The petitioner will then be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the petitioner makes their presentation and answers any questions that the board may have, the chairman will open the public hearing. Any person wishing to speak on the request should raise their hand, and when recognized by the chairman, come up to the podium. The speaker should identify themselves with name and address, indicate the relationship to the property in question, i.e. next door neighbor, live behind the property, or the property owner, etc., and state whether they are in favor of or against the variance request and give reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairman. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person will be recognized by the chairman to speak at one time. At the conclusion of public comments, the chairman will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or postpone the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to Oakland County Circuit Court.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the prior meeting. Are there any concerns with the minutes, or do I hear a motion to approve?
I make the motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting, but I did not attend.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made by Jim McCauley, seconded by Tom Desmond. Any discussion? Call the roll or the vote.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Rahman.
I was absent, so that should be yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Bossenbrook.
Yes.
Mr. Desmond.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next item. Oh. Why do we have 2 approval of the minutes?
One's agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Put the glasses on, Tater. Second is approval of the agenda. Is there any concerns with the agenda from board members? Mr. Green.
I move that we approve the agenda as printed.
Second.
Okay, I don't believe we need to have any motion. We don't have to have a motion.
I think we only have
It's
to
just if there's a concern.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on, next is the hearing of the cases. The first case is a variance request from Mr. Gary Abathira from 1151 Woodsley. I will call the city representative to present the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could direct everybody's attention to the monitors at the front of the room. This is for property 1151 Woodsley. This is an aerial of the neighborhood with the property near the bottom of the aerial outlined in red. And as you can see, the neighborhood's bounded by Stevenson, Rochester, and to the south is Maple. And this is a close-up of the neighborhood with some zoning layers overlaid in different colors. Now, everything you see in yellow is zoned identical residential zoning, and everything to the east on the right of this is zoned non-residential. There's a close-up of the subject property on the north side of Woodsley. Now, the applicant's proposing to construct a duplex on the property. That's a 2-unit residential development according to the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance does allow duplexes in this neighborhood, but it requires that the amount of lot area for each unit, you have to have 5,000 square feet. So this property would need to be 10,000 square feet to erect a duplex. The property only has 4,960 square feet per unit. So in order to proceed with placement of that duplex, he's requesting relief from the board to the square footage of the property. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Mr. Green?
Is this the only property in this area that has that varied size? There's a note by the petitioner at some point that the properties in the area are largely either approximately 5 or approximately 10,000 square feet. But is this either the only or one of maybe a couple of lots of this light varied size?
Well, one of the items that is provided on the days for the board is our standard, it's titled Parcel Variance Report. And I'm going to enlarge it here on the screen just for the edification of the public. But we've taken, I guess I would call it a random area. Now, the subject property is located on Woodsley right here. But we've taken a random representative of all these properties in yellow. And this report gives each parcel's area in square feet to the right of the table here. And then at the bottom, I shouldn't say at the bottom, but at the end of the table, and that's on page, well, the last page, it gives us some averages and standard deviations for the properties that you see outlined in yellow in the map. So that's the closest thing that the city has done in regards to an analysis to answer your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
I have one question.
Okay.
So I see some of the properties that has 40 feet frontage, they are less than 5,000 square feet, right?
Yes, for example, yes, there are some. Just looking at this report, we've got 2 right on this last page that are less than 5,000 square feet.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Green, did you have another question? Okay. I'd like to call the petitioner forward. Is that upside down?
It's upside down.
Good.
Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Gary Abathera, and I'm the petitioner. I'm the owner of 1151 Woodsley, and I am looking to put a duplex on the lot. To start out real easy, the house that is there right now is on an 80 by 124-foot lot. It's I'm going to call it a tired house. It's been there since in the 40s. So we're looking to remove that house and build a duplex. All the streets in this area here that you see in that triangle there are all subdivided back in the 1920s, 1930s, and they're all 40-foot lots, and they range between 115 foot deep and 124 feet deep. So I think there's only one street, might be this street right here, that has 150 foot deep lots. Everything else is narrower. So at some point, the city rezoned the property to the east to be light industrial. So somewhere in there, they took those, and then they decided to call this area an RT for duplexes, zone duplex areas. As you can see by all the pink on the map, there's 15 duplexes on those 6 streets right now. So if you look at the zoning ordinance, they have a zoning ordinance for RT, and it says what RT zoning is for. It is to put a buffer between non-residential use and lower density residential use. It's right in the zoning ordinance, and that's what the RT zoning is for. When they zoned it for RT, I don't know how they never figured the square footage for them, because there isn't a single lot in there that will handle a duplex without a variance on there. But the RT duplexes are to be a buffer between industrial and residential to the east. So that's my biggest concern that I have here right now. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Board members? I did have one. Looking at the math, you said the property was 80 feet by 124 feet.
Correct. So I'm 1 square foot by 80 feet short.
Yeah, that's why I was just looking at the math, is if it was 80 by 125, you'd have no
wouldn't be-
problem.
Yes. And with the duplex I'm doing is, we're not asking for any side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks. Everything falls within the ordinance of what has to be in there. It's just, driving down the street, you would never know that the lot wasn't the right size that requires the 5,000 square feet. And there are, as the answer, I think your question was, there are numerous houses that are on 40 foot by 120, 40 by 124s. There is really no house that's a 40 footer that would be in there correctly. And I don't know if it was just back in the 60s and 70s, they didn't go by the ordinance, they didn't do what they did, because there's a lot of them that are built on narrower lots without variances.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Mr. McCauley.
We had one letter of opposition to this, and their concern was that they felt down the road that you would potentially come back for variance setbacks to the front.
I don't plan on ever coming back for a variance for the setbacks. I mean, the 26 feet is, you need that for a driveway to fit in there, and I'd like to be able to put 2 cars in my driveways. So if you come too far further, and I mean, my word is I'm not coming back for a variance.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to put out there for you. I did talk to neighbors on both sides of me. The person to the east, they are renters, and I was unable to talk to the actual landowner. And the people to the west, I talked to them, and they didn't have an issue with it. So,
okay.
all right.
One clarification. Looking at the plat map, it looks like this property was originally platted on the 10th of April, 1924. So well
Okay.
before the city was a
Nice.
city, it was still a
96 years.
township, and before zoning ordinance was put in place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now going to open the public hearing. Anybody that would like to speak on this item, please come to the microphone one at a time and state your name and address. Not seeing anyone who wants to speak on this item, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the table. Do any of my colleagues want to speak on the item? Mr. Green.
I would like to particularly speak to point A within the practical difficulty concern. To me, that 1 foot difference seems fairly unusual as a point to restrict that on. If it were a mere foot wider, they would have been able to do this, the petitioner would have been able to do this without coming to the board. To me, that's fairly unusual and to me, an undue burden on what would otherwise be a very straightforward, yes, this complies, go for it.
Yes, I believe you're talking about the exceptional shallowness
I am, it is,
for A.
yes, I apologize. Shallowness, not narrowness.
I'm pretty intimately familiar with this neighborhood. It's one of the more unique collections of property in Troy. I mean, the consistency across the board over there is absent. So, I mean, as far as whether this fits in with the neighborhood, it would be, I mean, as somebody that deals with selling a property in this exact neighborhood, I wouldn't notice the difference. You know, I don't know if the pink squares on this item represent where duplexes exist, but I do know that there are many of them in there because I see them when I drive through it. So to me, this doesn't interfere at all with the way the neighborhood's set up, and I would have no issues with it.
In fact, it matches the design as displayed. Obviously, that's not the set one, but the plan design matches the current duplexes fairly closely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went and looked at the area, and I also pulled it up on Google Maps, and I came up with the exact same number of duplexes in the area, and the approximation of them were the same. I looked at the plat, if he would have came to us and said he wanted to split this property into two parcels again, would that fit our standards according to our new zoning ordinances? No. With these older plotted pieces of property, it's very difficult to comply with our zoning ordinances. But I agree with everybody else so far that I believe that this fits for that area. I believe that what we're looking at, the exceptional characteristics A, that it meets that. I believe that B, it does. C, I don't know about C. D, I believe that it hasn't been created by this owner or the previous owner. And E, so I believe it fits 4 out of the 5, and the 5th one, that's a coin toss. So as far as I'm concerned, so I agree. I think this is something that fits in that area and will continue to happen in that area.
Is that a motion?
I'd like to make the motion that we grant the variance for 1151 Woodsley.
Okay. Do I hear a
Second.
second? Okay. So moved by Mr. McCauley, seconded by Mr. Desmond. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I could, just before there is any discussion,
Is that the wrong address?
if we could just note that the board did receive a public comment
Yes.
in writing, and we just want to make sure that it's clear to the public that everybody's received that and considered as part of the record.
Yes, there's 3 items I forgot. I forgot to introduce everyone. I forgot to have the communications read, and I forgot to notify the petitioner that he has the option of requesting a delay because we have less than the full board present.
Very good.
Good job.
Yeah, this is my first time being chairman. After 10 years of being on the board, over half the time being vice chairman.
Well, you're doing great.
Yeah.
So,
Look at.
so we do have one communication. Usually the vice chairman gets to do the communication talk. It is from the neighbor next door. It was alluded to. They listed 5 items in this communication, and each of the board members have had an opportunity to read it in detail. Mr. McCauley.
I actually asked the petitioner about item number 4 on this correspondence.
Okay. Mr. Green.
I did actually want to speak to point C. To me, the purpose of zoning that property RT for transitional property, including duplexes, it's not personal to want to build a duplex on a practically and yet impractically duplex-sized lot. That's concordance with the zoning as intended, more or less, by the planners.
Okay, thank you. And I haven't spoken yet, but I would like to echo my colleagues' comments for item A. It is exceptional shallowness. If this had been platted after the city and the zoning ordinance were in place, I'm sure they would have added 1 foot, so it would have been compliant. B, it wasn't created by another property. C, it is not of a personal nature. It's not because of something that's personal to the petitioner. D, wasn't created by the current owner or the previous owner. And E, it does not harm or alter the essential character of the neighborhood as shown on the map provided by the petitioner and by several board members experience traveling through the neighborhood, including myself. So if there's no further comments from the board, I'd like to call the vote.
Sorry.
Oh, there was one, okay.
I did want to momentarily, and it has partially been addressed already, but I did want to speak directly to the neighbor who sent the email and the communication, recognizing in particular that it is narrow. I live on a narrow dead-end street, mostly around the corner from this, not exactly, but fairly close by. So I'm familiar with that difficulty with street parking and with narrowness and density and the very strange non-compliant nature of the area. So one of the major concerns is parking, and that cul-de-sac house, we have one similar to it, that can be a concern. But notably, this actually, while it does increase the residency, also increases the driveway space and refurbishes it, having visited the site, and it's actually visible in the images provided in our packet. That driveway is in need of refurbishment or repaving, and this will actually allow for additional parking. Both driveways will allow for additional parking relative to what is there now. So that will actually enhance that in the way. And to the second point, similarly, this will provide additional space. It's a smaller home with more setback and no yard. This does balance it, but if you look at the lot relative to those near it and the home on it, this actually distances things further from the neighbors so that they're not staring in each other's windows. So it may change the balance immediately from the street, but it actually balances the direct neighbor as opposed to the cul-de-sac end neighbor a bit better. So I think that it actually fits better with the space.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further comments, call for the vote.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is 5B. It is a petition to construct a home addition at 920 Longfellow. I'd turn it over to Mr. Evans to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is an aerial of the neighborhood with the property right in the middle, outlined in red at 920 Longfellow. This area is located just west of Rochester, between Waddles and Long Lake. I've zoomed in closer to give everybody a neighbor perspective. Everything you see to the left of Rochester Road is zoned for single-family residential use. And that's a closer depiction of the property and the neighbors. This is the back of the house as it exists right now, and they want to add on to the back of the house towards the left, the rear property line. They provided us that elevation as well. Now, this is their site plan, and the top of this drawing, outlined in red, depicts the addition to the house that is the subject of the request. Now this site plan here, at the bottom of the site plan is actually where the public right-of-way is. It's hard to see, but this is the existing house with the new addition overlaid. And as the agenda indicates, a 40-foot setback is required for any additions to this home, and they're proposing 37 feet 8 inches when all is said and done. So in order to proceed, they're seeking relief from the board. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you. Any board members have a question for this item? Hearing none, I would like to call the petitioner forward. Please state your name.
Al Marion, I'm the builder for the Kings. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to review this request. I know how important it is for you and obviously how important it is for us going forward with this project. One thing that I don't need to reiterate what's in the practical difficulty document, but one thing that we didn't talk about is that this new layout makes this kitchen dining area more handicap accessible. In Mrs. King's mother is not wheelchair bound, but at times with walker and wheelchair. The current layout that they have right now does not allow her to move about this kitchen whatsoever. In the one photo of 30, on your documents, it shows that the peninsula of the existing kitchen. There's actually 27.5 inches from the refrigerator to the peninsula counter to access the sink and the other workstations in that particular kitchen. You know, this home was built in 1977. At the time, if any of you remember, this was a building boom for Troy at that time. They were putting houses up and selling them as quickly as they could in the 70s. And so things have changed with families and with where families gather. And proportionately, this, you know, 1/3 of the living space should be part of the square footage. The other third would be the service area, which is the kitchen. And then the other third is the sleeping area. And when you figure out the square footage for all of this, the kitchen area itself and dining room area are significantly less than the 1/3 that normal homes would have. So the Kings wanting to stay in Troy, to be in Troy, to keep their kids in schools in Troy, they felt this was the best option for them to try to make something better and more livable for them. And so we have sat down and done in-depth study with an interior designer, kitchen planner, and also an architect working with us on this project. So to make this, knowing how difficult it is to make a decision to give variances, because I went through this with my own home in Troy not very long ago. I know that it's a very big concern for everybody that's involved, including neighbors and such. So I know that it's something that we have to take seriously, and it's not something that we're doing this on a whim. It is something that's been well planned out, and we've spent quite some time talking about this and doing the things that have to be done the correct way. And even with our addition that we're talking about here, we're still well under the 30% of buildable area for this particular lot, and we're in the low 20% to encompass this particular lot that they're currently on. This home was actually 43 years ago today. This home was constructed. Showed on the plot plan, the original plot plan that was built in 1977. And so with that, the most important thing is it's a kind of a hardship to the fact that her mother, when she comes into the house, there's only one place that she can go in that kitchen. There's no other place for her to maneuver with that kitchen area. Now with 40 inches between islands and counter spaces, a wheelchair can get through that without any difficulty whatsoever. And so that's their biggest concern in wanting to stay in the structure, is that that would be helpful for her mother as she gets older. That wheelchair is probably going to become more dependable for her, and she's going to be more dependent on a wheelchair, and that this would be something that they would like to, live with and get their kids through schools here, and it's very important for them for that reason. Any questions?
Mr. Green?
I had a question about the island in the design, if I'm looking at this correctly. And please correct me, but you need 28 inches. And that island, while they can be very useful, would eat up, having it in place and then being able to maneuver around it eats up significantly more than that. It also adds cabinetry on the sides and everything else, but is it essentially having that island as configured that actually looks like it's a little larger than that, that's requiring that? What element of this specifically is causing the need to push it back that extra 28 inches?
Well, with that, we're able to move the refrigerator into a new location, because what we're going to do is remove the wall that is the wall between the dining room and the kitchen itself. So removing that wall and expanding that, pushing everything to the east, really makes a big difference in this layout. and really makes things more functional for them in that whole design and that whole plot, that whole plan of the kitchen itself. In today's families, the kitchen is the gathering place, whether it's a family dinner or whether it's a large family, extended family get together. It seems like everybody gathers in the kitchen these days. Where the family room is a good-sized family room, and back when this was built in '77, that's where people were gathering. Things have changed in today's living with an active family of 5, and a dog as well. Things have changed, and so this layout. We even talked with the designers. We talked about kicking the wall out to the east, which we wouldn't have to do a variance on, but it just didn't make things any better as far as the functionality of what we were trying to do, and also architecturally, it wasn't very sound to have this appendage sticking out the side of the house from a front elevation. So we really did spend. This has been talked about and planned out for months. This isn't just something that we came up with last week and said, oh, let's try this. We've spent a lot of time and talked for a lot of reasons about making this what it is. This gives them a home that they can raise their girls on for the rest of their lifetime. This makes it a home where they can live here the rest of their lives if they choose to. Megan's a teacher, and Brian works for the government, and so it's one of those places where they love Troy. They love what Troy offers. And being an ex-teacher myself, I know what the school system is all about. And I was a teacher in Troy. And I just know how important it is to keep a family like this in Troy. And this plan right here will keep this family in Troy for quite some time. And that's why they're pretty emotionally involved with this as well. And it's something that they're really hoping to move forward with. And I know you can't put personal touches on this, but for them, it is. It's something that they love the neighborhood. They love this. They love the fact that they can take their girls and walk down the street to go to school right now in the elementary level. And it's something that's very important for people that live in Troy to have those neighborhood schools.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner? Mr. Desmond.
Did you do any research into other properties that have extensions specifically within the very easterly part of Longfellow? I'm looking at 974 and 919 across the street. Both of them look like they have relatively tight setbacks, rear setbacks compared to, there's an extension on 97.
Those are newer structures. Those are homes that have just recently been built.
Okay.
And I'm just assuming that they stayed within the same setbacks of what they're, because the builder obviously had to stay within those setbacks for them to build those structures. Okay. So I'm assuming that that's what they did.
Basically, we're looking for lot issues. I mean, officially, we're not supposed to take into account what personal use is for the property, but like, is there any issues with the land? Is there mature trees that you don't want coming down? Is there anything that's happening with the property that would warrant the granting of a variance for it?
No, there's no trees or anything that are in the way. They actually back up to that parcel that the city owns, has owned for a number of years, and currently there's no one that lives behind them, but obviously we know that someday there probably will be, but who knows. So they really are backed up to a pretty nice sized wooded area. Deer are their neighbors, and so we know what that's about in Troy. But so it's a wonderful lot. It's a really nice neighborhood. It's a really nice location. Very practical for where they work and where they go and come from. So that's why they'll invest in staying right here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Part of what Mr. Desmond is asking is that those items are things we can't consider.
Right.
So although it's not specified in our list, ADA compliance is less of a personal nature than I have a grandmother or a mother that needs space. So if the basic reason for needing this is that the kitchen cannot be configured for use unless it's ADA compliant. That's a bit easier to digest than,
Yeah,
I don't believe that applies to residential property, though.
yeah, it does not.
Okay.
It does not, but at the same time, it's something that's obviously important, and for them specifically is important. That's why we went forward with requesting this, and that's really the only reason. So I know that the entire structure would have to be ADA compliant, but for the most part it will be. Right now it is not, but we'd have to widen some doors in order for that to happen. Not on that first floor.
okay?
A quick question.
Yes.
So, on the east side, what's the setback?
It's 25,
I know it's 25 feet. What is the requirement for the east side?
10 feet?
10 feet?
Yes.
I have to look at the code to refresh my memory.
So you have 25 feet. So there are a lot of space there. But
There
you
is.
don't want to extend the house on that side.
We do not. We do not. It just, for many reasons, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't accomplish the goals that we have for this, what I would consider a minimal request to go into the setback. 27 inches is really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't make sense to go 10 feet further or, 2 stories in that to the east. It just doesn't make sense to do that. It doesn't make the functionality of that room any better or any more functional for sure.
I believe the question was
What is the setback requirement for the east side
okay.
of the house?
Yes, the setback requirement for the side for the R1C is at least, so 10 feet on each side, and they have to total 20.
So we have a lot of, spaces on both sides, but then that doesn't help. So you are looking for only like 27 inch, how many inches?
27 inches.
27 inches, okay.
Because on the cantilevered door wall, or cantilevered dining room window and the existing structure and the door wall that sets out 12 inches further, that's right at the maximum of that 40-foot mark. So we're going to go basically from that point, from the existing foundation, we're going 27 inches back. Not from the cantilevered part, It's from the existing foundation that we're going back with that. The door wall and the dining room windows are on cantilevers. They're not on foundation footings. Those are just cantilevered back.
And the house is meeting the front setback requirement? Is it exactly, or you have some space in the front?
Currently, it's meeting those setbacks. Yeah, we're not doing anything to the front, going into any of the setbacks or easements.
So how big is the house right now, floor area?
2,500 square feet right now. 2347? 2347.
Okay.
So we're adding 90 feet to it, is what we're, basically doing. 90 square feet, and you think all this work for 90 square feet isn't really, but it's very well worth it for the space that we need.
Okay. Just a point of clarification. On the plans that were submitted, which is page 26 of our agenda, it shows 2 feet 4 inch variance requested, which would be 28 inches.
Okay, 28.
28 inches.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
We don't want to go
it
through
is-
this and have that wrong because we
Right.
have to start over.
Right,
We've had items in front of us for a half inch before.
really, okay,
Okay?
yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
Oh, you have one more?
I do. Sorry. If I'm looking at this correctly, as the structure exists, there is, it looks like a stair, I don't think I noticed that when I was in, but a stairway that backs the kitchen, so there's no ability to bump the kitchen back into
No.
the home.
Not without...
Structure.
Yeah, big structural. Yeah, the stairway is right there, backs up to where the refrigerator is on that wall currently.
Yeah, so to that point, that the photos are very accurate. It's narrow getting into that kitchen from that direction.
Yes.
Moving the fridge accomplishes part of that, but by bumping the wall, you eliminate the dining space, which necessitates the island.
Right.
And it's very common and very comfortable. I like the plan from a usability standpoint. My question is, if you eliminate the peninsula and I don't know, if the wall between the kitchen and the dining room is eliminated, thus opening both ends of the space, you maintain a much more usable dining room and kitchen space, if not as integrated. And I don't think it requires a variance. It definitely would lose some cabinetry. My struggle is that I see the design and the joy behind it, and the benefits. But I understand that this was very carefully thought through for usability and function and trying to minimize impact. But I wonder about other configurations that may not be as perfect, but that comply.
Well, we did go through some of those others. In the bottom line was this was the choice to go with. And as we worked and talked to both, they've talked to their neighbors, and no neighbor was really opposed to this in any way. So we thought, well, let's move forward and see see if a variance is going to be something we can be granted. Because I think it was, I felt and talked with them saying that it was worth the effort. Because I know in my own structure that I did, I moved my addition 5 feet back into the easement, and it made a world of difference for my family, my kids, my girls growing up, going through Troy High. I had 60 girls over at my house for a swimming party, and we're able to accommodate that without any trouble. So that was seeing what it did for my family at the age they are. It will help their family like it did mine. That's really where I'm coming from as well with them.
One more question I have.
Yes.
So can we go to the layout, what is that page? Let me just give you the page.
27, I believe?
Yeah.
Page 27.
Not this layout, the GIS view, the Google shot.
Oh, yeah, the other neighbors?
The neighbors, yes.
Yeah.
19.
Whoop, sorry about that. That one or you want the closer one?
19.
The previous one, please. If I compare these plats, the other one, can we say that these are more square shaped than the other rectangular one? Is it? It seems like, right? Like these.
The lot size?
Those four.
Oh, yes. Yes, the first 4 off of Rochester Road are very similar in size.
And then they're more square shaped, than the others are more rectangular shaped. So my question is, the setback requirements are same, right? This is for Mr. Evans. For those other plots
Yes,
that we have,
same zone.
the 40 feet setback requirement is
Yeah.
common for the whole area, right?
Well, the zoning rear yard setback for the RC zone properties is 40 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like for this 4 plats, it is difficult to maintain and have a good size property. I mean, that's the way I see it. I know the width is good, but
Now, you would think in today's world that 23 or 400 square foot home is adequate to live in. Well, it gets a little tight, believe it or not, with a family of 5. And it's something that you hope that you can make it and live with it, but this is something that they've decided to go forward with.
So do you think that we can consistently apply the same setback, rearward setback? I mean, I was thinking that maybe this is something that we can consider. You know what I'm saying, right? Like because of the shape of the plat is a square shaped, so this is not consistent with the rest of the plat, so that's causing the problem.
Yes.
So now this is not only for this one, for other three also, because of those first four. So I don't know if that could,
Probably consider that during the debate portion. We'll get to
Okay.
any other comments from the residents. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I have one question.
Oh, one more question.
Just,
Mr. Ross.
do you know if there's a history of any previous variance requests with this property?
No,
No?
not for this particular property.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Evans.
I have an answer to that if Mr. Bossenbrook is interested.
I am interested, please.
The original, what appeared to be the original builder asked for I believe a setback variance in 1977. They were denied.
Was it a setback relative to the rear setback, or don't we know?
Let me take a look. I might be able to confirm that as the meeting progresses.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to call forward people that would like to speak on this item.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item in the audience, please come forward to the microphone and identify yourself. Hearing none, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Mr. McCauley.
I'm speaking to what Ms. Ryman was talking about. Basically, I looked at these parcels, went through them all, basically for that whole subdivision that was platted. Those four properties closest to Rochester Road are at 110 feet. The next smallest one is at 130 feet. If they had a 130-foot lot, would this be an issue? No. So from that standpoint, because of the exceptional characteristic of its shallowness, that's why they're here today for wanting this variance, in my mind.
Thank you. Any other board members want to discuss this item or offer a resolution? Mr. McCauley.
Might as well make them all today, so here we go. I'd like to make the resolution that we approve the variance for 920 Longfellow,
For 28 inches?
for 28 inches, yeah, in the
Okay.
rear setback.
As
do it?
as indicated in,
Yeah, somebody else did.
As indicated in the
Second, if
agenda.
no one else is going
the agenda.
I think it's all of us. We just did them all.
Okay.
I just didn't want to get.
Let's get the
excuse me,
wording.
I just want to make sure we're following the agenda as opposed to a different number.
Yes.
Okay.
Moved by Mr. McCauley, seconded by Mr. Desmond to approve the request as printed in the agenda and shown on the drawings. Any discussion from the board members? Anyone want to go through the items and clarify each of our 5 items?
I just want to put on the record that I will be voting, if the motion is to approve, I'll be voting no on the variance request. I don't think that the 5 items of practical difficulty have been articulated, proven by the petitioner. I think this is, unfortunately, perhaps a common problem, but I think this is a problem that's more of a personal nature as opposed to something that runs with the land. The parcel itself may be a different size than the other parcels in the neighborhood, but it's simply a square piece of property. There's nothing really irregular to it. I mean, we've had petitions in the past where there have been requests and the nature of it was something along the lines of, this was a house built in the 1970s. Now it's the 2020, 2019. It doesn't fit the current lifestyle of people. That's true, and I agree with that, but I don't think that addresses what we have to consider under the statement of practical difficulty. So I sympathize and totally understand the petition. I have 3 children, family of 5, similar situation as a resident of Troy, always looking for space in my home. But I think for what I just said, I don't think that this meets the standards for the zoning request.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members? Mr. McCauley?
I want to kind of talk about your point a little bit. I'm probably one that says no more than anybody else up here regarding that, about setbacks and really getting into them a little bit. But I truly believe that this does fit our practical difficulty A when you start talking about the shallowness to it. Because if this piece of property came up today with its size and dimensions, would it fit our basic small lot size? No, it wouldn't. It'd be too small. So because of that, that's why I look at more than anything else. Even though the petitioner did not present his case in that manner, he made it more of a personal nature. I'm looking beyond that and saying, okay, let's take all that away, forget the personal nature, forget the island. Let's look at what they're asking for. If it fits on the property, is the property meet the dimensions? I say the exceptional narrowness, I'm sorry, I apologize, exceptional shallowness of it. I believe that our requirements and variance sought that are in that location. I believe that the dimensions are difficult, have not been created by this owner or the previous owner, but was created by the builder and the lots that they got originally, and I don't believe it's harmful to the area. So from that standpoint, even though the presentation was more geared to how it affects the family, I threw all that out and I just looked at the property and looked at the request. So I get what you're saying though too, and that's why we're up here. I like the fact that we talk about this and we have different opinions and different viewpoints, because that's what makes us work.
Okay. Any other board members? Hearing no other board members, I will opine as the chairperson. I share the comments with Mr. McCauley. I also appreciate in page 23 and 24 of our agenda where the petitioner put forth their comments on each of our items. I found them to be quite succinct. And in reading those and looking at our items, I agree with item A. Item B, it is related to this premises. Item C, although there were lots of items that were listed as personal items by the presentation, the bottom line is, I believe the nature of it is the squareness of the property. Item D, characteristic which makes compliance difficult was not created by the current or previous owner. In item E, it is not harmful or alter the essential character of the area. It is only a 28-inch variance. And then finally, I would notice that we did receive one communication from the rear property owner, which is the city of Troy, from our department of, which two departments are these? Engineering, both engineering, with no negative or positive comments. So I'd like to, if there's no further comments from the board, I'd like to request call the vote.
And this is a motion to grant.
Yes.
Mr. Rahman.
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
No.
Mr. Desmond.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
No.
We have 4 yes votes.
Okay, motion passes. I had to double check because it's not a majority, it's 4 votes to pass. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda, item 6, communications. None in front of us right now. Item 7, miscellaneous business. I did not see any miscellaneous business on the table. Do we have anything from the city?
No.
Okay. Item 8, public comments. I'd like to call anyone forward that would like to speak to the board at this time. Please state your name for the record.
I'm Ken Shaheen. I was in here looking for a variance for building a garage. So my last meeting here, I told the board that I was going to be unable to come in January and because of work obligation, and Mr. Clark said that was okay and that we would pick this up in February. But then I called my neighbor to schedule the 3D photo that you guys had requested that would be done of the property, and he informed me that this was settled in January. So I called the city, and Mr. Evans said, well, watch the TV. And so I had to watch the rebroadcast of the issue and found out that you guys had adjudicated this prematurely, I thought, because we hadn't been able to give my case. And watching it, it became pretty clear that most of you didn't remember most of what I was bringing it to the board for in the first place. So my request is one that you at least allow me to present my case fully, and so I can at least answer questions, because I still have no space to build a structure on my property other than the one listed. And if there were objections to it, to the structure that I had, I don't have a problem with that, but you've left me with no spot to build on that property, so I still have storage issues. I took down 2 storage sheds in the first place, and so I don't have a place to keep my lawn equipment now, except some of it's outside, some of it's inside the garage, which makes it a difficulty. And so this is the only available property that I have listed, or the only space on my property to list it. If some of the variances, if you have an issue with the 3-foot versus 6-foot, because I had asked for a 3, so I didn't have to cut into my driveway with the current garage, I'm fine with making the structure smaller or lower, but I still need a place to put it. So you guys heard the case without really. For one, you told me I could come back in February and hear the case, and then you went ahead and heard it without me being here. So,
I remember it a bit differently. I said we'd postpone it to January and let us know if you can't make it.
well, January was the date I was going to miss. Okay, that was the date I just told people that I wasn't going to be able to come.
I believe at that December meeting, I said, do you want 30 days or do you need 60 days? And you said you could do it in 30 days. I wasn't at the January meeting, but I know I was at the December one, and that was a point I brought completely up at that point in time. If you weren't going to make the January meeting, knowing that you're on the agenda, did you call and postpone? Or
No, Mr. Clark told me, his statement before I left was, he says, if you can make the January meeting, do it, because I told you I had a work obligation and I was going to try and get out of it. So I was not able to get out of the work obligation and assumed it would, and he told me it would be just revisited in February. So, and it wasn't. It was, so.
Yes, as you probably saw in the minute, in the meeting, and what we received in the table, in the hard copies, your neighbors universally voiced opposition to the construction, and as we had spoken in the prior meeting, that is a big consideration for the fifth item in our criteria.
So the only a couple of those letters that you got are actual neighbors within the zone thing. The other people are just friends. So, of Mr. Opie. So, and Mr. Green, the guy who came and asked about getting the 3D vision, I had been in contact with him. I met with the person that was going to do that twice and had him. So he's not opposed to it. He was trying to adjudicate. The main objector is Mr. Opie, because Mr. Opie doesn't like to look at my property and see a storage, or he didn't want to see that garage. But this objection was primarily the height. And I'm willing to make something smaller, but I still need a place to put the equipment, and I don't have another place on that lot to put it. So unless you guys can come up with something or give me another position to do that.
Mr. Green?
Please correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm by no means the final voice on this panel or in this room, but while I agree that the miscommunication on wherever that lays about the intent for the January meeting was unfortunate, which I was also unable to attend, I could be mistaken, but because the board has now ruled on this, your only recourse is, per our rules, to take the request and appeal the decision to the Oakland County Circuit. I feel for you.
Mr. Chair, I'd reiterate at this point, the only remedy is to appeal to the circuit court. The issue cannot be revisited at this time because there's been a ruling.
Or you wait for 1 year.
I think that,
Mr. McCauley?
That was my
Okay.
question. My question was, could he reapply with a different application, something smaller, something?
but you guys were the ones
Yep.
who told me it was okay, though.
I may address that.
Yes, Mr. Motsney?
He could reapply with a different variance request, but if it's
Okay.
substantially the same request, he would have to wait 1 year.
Okay. So
Given that statement, if you were to work with your neighbors and come up with a changed request that would deal with what you just spoke about with the lower height, the setback, the viewscape of what your neighbor, Mr. Opie, that would probably be appropriate for reconsideration.
Before a year?
yes, that's what you were saying.
I mean, the difficulty is in defining the substantial, and we could get a
It
legal.
wouldn't be reconsideration. He'd have to file a new application.
Yeah. Okay, it would be a new application. Unfortunately, it has the same fee and process and notification, which means it doesn't happen immediately, but you could go through the process again. Could you please define a little bit what a substantial change would be?
We have to see it.
Okay.
One suggestion I do have is that the meeting video is available, and all the videos are available. That would give anyone the history as to perhaps why it was denied, and perhaps if those issues could be addressed to the board's satisfaction with the future application, quite possibly that could have traction.
Okay.
I know you've told us in the beginning that you've been working on this for quite a while.
Yeah, this has been a couple-year project, and these guys are not unopposed. Mr. Opie, is the primary issue. I don't think he's going to budge, to be honest, because we've tried to work with him. He didn't have an objection before, even though this is probably 150 feet from his house or more. It's a substantial distance. But he likes to look at my yard, which I have to pay taxes on and maintain. I'm the one without storage. So, and if I had another spot, I'd be happy to put it there. But this is the only spot between the City of Troy's restraints and the DEQ that I have to put it. So I don't have another option. So,
Just one clarification on that was addressed at the meeting was the space inside the loop of your driveway right adjacent to your garage. Even though I believe you mentioned that there was stonework there and there is an elevation difference, but
there wasn't sufficient room to put a structure in there. I think we visited that on the first time through. So.
Mr. Desmond, did you have anything else?
No.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Thank you for your comments.
All right.
Anyone else would like to address the board for any matter? Hearing none, that brings us to the adjournment. Thank you for attending.